Welcome, folks. Glad to have you here. All right, Liz. Well, whenever you're ready, I will keep letting folks in from the waiting room.
Okay.
But the mic is officially yours. The floor is yours. And
Okay.
welcome to the folks coming in.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll let people trickle in. Not a problem. I will share my screen here in just a second. But since we're saying I've only got a couple people in here so far, which I can start from this perspective, I kind of want to know what everybody does. Because sometimes I can tailor my talk to that too. So if you guys wouldn't mind just popping off of or putting your microphone back on for a second and just telling me who you are and what you do, that would be amazing. I know we all don't want to talk at the same time, but let me, my screen shows Julie Case. Julie, you want to tell me what you do?
Sure. I am out here in Wisconsin, and we raise heritage breed sheep. We have 125 tuna sheep on grass, so a lot of pasture rotation, and there's a lot of dynamics there as being, it's just me, my husband, and our kids to then try, and I spend 85% of my day making the pastures and rotating the sheep and things to then try and sell the product. I hear a lot of, what you should, and trying to juggle that. Exactly, right?
Yep.
Trying to juggle taking care of the animals. That's why I'm excited about you. And then people want also the byproduct, but they also want your story. So, and now sheep hides, like bison hides, I'm sure, have now gotten popular. So they're like, what about the hide? And it's another component. Everybody says you should. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about trying to manage it all, because you have to wear all the hats, and there's only so much time to wear the hats and make any money to even get anything back to pay for what you've already done. So anyway, that's it.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, that's great. That's great. Okay, cool. All right. So the next person on my screen is Michelle Puckett. Michelle, can you tell me just where you're from and what you do?
Oh, boo. I'm next. Okay. I'm in Richmond, California.
Okay.
I'm not a farmer right now. I want to become one, and that's why I'm here. I'm a city girl and just trying to learn. And this is actually my first farming conference. So
cool. Awesome. You got to start somewhere. So that's perfect.
Right. Okay. And I like the title of your
I had to be cheeky somehow,
Right. And the thought that one could make money farming. So that's awesome.
Totally. All right. The next person on my screen is Ashley. I'm going to say this wrong. 10 harms. Tell me how to say that, and then tell me what you do and where you are.
So it's 10 harmful.
Oh, okay, there you go.
You were close. It's my husband. He's Dutch, so that's not my not my heritage. However, so I'm in the Keweenaw, Upper Peninsula, Michigan.
Okay.
And so I run a small farm, and it's really just Jake and I, just vegetables, some fruit. It's actually, we've been doing this for 10 years and built super slowly because again, it's just two people, and what we're thinking about trying to move towards, because we're just physically and monetarily just doing vegetables, it's really difficult. So we have a lot of property, so we're hoping to build a small building to get a kitchen in and start doing events and hosting things and having classes, hopefully. But we still need to do all of that. And will that be lucrative. I know it's adding more work,
Mhm.
just, I don't know, it's kind of what, we're just trying to think of how to expand in different ways.
Totally. Okay. All right. I like it. Awesome. All right. How about Sarah? And I'm going to say this wrong too. Brubacher. Did I
Hi,
say
good
it right?
morning. Yeah,
Hey.
that would be the more accurate pronunciation. We tend to go by Brubaker in North America.
All right. All right.
But yeah, I am have like a new property, a year old, 28 acres in Nebraska, southwestern Nebraska. And I am mostly an herbalist. And so I'm like growing herbs from a clinic I want to start. But I also have been growing vegetables for market, and I'm kind of like basically figuring out like, okay, how do I build a profitable business structure? What avenues do I want to do? Explore. And so there's like a lot of options in front of me. I'm trying to narrow down where to focus. And yeah.
I hear you. Totally. Okay. Cool. That's awesome.
Mhm.
All right. The next person on my list is Natasha Wilson. And you just tell me where you are and what you do.
Yeah, I am in Southeast Iowa, and
Okay.
I'm a do pasture-based meat, eggs, and honey farmer.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. All right. So this room's starting to get really full, which is awesome. I'm gonna take one more person, and then if everybody could put their name, where they are, and what they do in the chat box, that'd be awesome because I can peruse that too. So, but I'm gonna take one more. How about Melissa Driscoll? Where are you from, and what do you do?
Hi.
Hey.
I am in Kenyon, Minnesota. I have a small
Okay.
organic farm. It's between Rochester and the Twin Cities in Minnesota.
Okay.
And I just like the title of your talk because I think during the kind of height of the pandemic, and because of some pandemic money, I was able to pay myself like $200 a week. But
Mhm.
you know, I'm worth way more than that.
Yeah.
And it's hard
Totally.
to support yourself on that. So
Yeah.
yeah, just I
Cool.
grow vegetables, fruits, ginger and turmeric, which are kind of big sellers around here,
Mhm.
and animal welfare approved eggs. And I
Nice.
sell mostly wholesale to food makers. So kimchi
Okay.
maker, tea maker, a pie maker, a jam maker. So
Ooh,
I'm selling to kind of small food makers. Yeah.
nice. Okay, very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Like I said, everybody else, I would love to have you share who you are and what you do and where you are in the chat box, just so I can kind of get a sense of what everybody's doing. I love to hear everybody's stories too. I could spend this entire time just talking with you all individually, but let me share my screen and we will move forward with the content you guys actually came to check out. How about that? All right, it should go here in just a second. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Can we all see my screen? Oh, let's see. That just did it. I hope we're good. Okay. There we go. All right. So I will start this unless somebody says that they can't see me. Are we good? Sarah, you just want to make sure that it's good to go?
We had
I
you
wanna
for a
start.
second and now we're seeing the chat window and the Zoom screen. So
Okay, so go back to my thing.
mhm.
There we go. Good?
There we go. Now we see it.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay. So, right. So I was hoping this would be kind of a catchy title for everybody. Because this is one of the things that's on all of our minds, I feel like, is actually how to make a farm business profitable. We tend to get into this lifestyle because we like the lifestyle. And being on our own space and making our own foods and sharing those with others. But at the end of the day, in order to keep doing it, we actually need to make some money farming. So I'm going to share a little bit about how I make money as a farmer, because my story is that I am a mom of 2 boys. I've got young boys. I actually have a newborn who's only about not even 4 weeks old yet. And I've got a toddler running around. He's almost 3. I'm also the wife of an active duty military officer, so my husband is not around all the time. And I'm the owner of the first commercial bison operation in the state of West Virginia, which has been loads of fun. It's been kind of a wild ride. I could get into some serious details on why we chose bison specifically, but I was a nurse originally, and I did labor and delivery for about 12 years. So I'm very passionate about health, and the bison kind of fits that profile. So that's specifically why we got into those animals, at least a tidbit on that. And I spent also 6 years as an active duty naval officer. That's where I met my husband. But I've been an entrepreneur since about I was 12. I remember running my first summer camp for kids at the age of 12. And I made enough money to have spending for, the majority of the year doing those camps. So I've always liked to kind of peruse in and dabble in the entrepreneurial type things and running businesses and things like that. I also ran my first official business, I guess, in 2010. It was from the nursing side of the house, but yeah, so this definitely piques my interest, and we wanted to get into farming primarily from the lifestyle perspective, like a lot of us do. I was at the point where we wanted to start having children, and my husband wanted to start planning for retirement, and he wanted to be back at home. And I grew up with horses, and so we chose to start the farming lifestyle from that perspective, with the understanding that we were both nurses, and if we didn't want to keep those careers, we needed to make this profitable. So my job in 2017 was to start and create a profitable farm business, because my husband retires from the military next year. And the idea is to make this a farm venture that actually pays 3, if not more, salaries. We, in just 5 years, run an operation that we bring in, we're well into the 6 figures, and we pay 2 full-time salaries, and I actually pay benefits on top of that as well. And I've been paying a full-time salary for about 16 months, and we just started doing benefits this year. So those things have kind of rolled into each other. And a lot of people ask, they're like, well, you must have inherited your property, right? Like you didn't have to buy that, or you didn't have to buy the infrastructure, or you just walked into a cattle business where the animals were already standing there for you. Like that must be how you make it profitable in 5 years. But we started from the ground up, literally. We did not have any land. We did not have any animals. We had to purchase everything and start literally from the ground up. So it's totally doable without inheriting a farm. Let me just tell you that, because that's what a lot of people get kind of worried about. So basically, I'm going to start here with my overview. My 6 secrets to success are on these next 2 slides. I also asked Sarah to upload those to my profile, so you guys can kind of keep these. I've got 2 downloads actually that you guys can have from these slides specifically, just as a reminder, something to gauge off of. It's kind of nice to have something later on in 6 months to look back at and be like, I listened to that talk, but what did she say again? And this kind of wraps up everything I'm going to talk about here in the next hour or so. So basically, the first thing is understanding your audience and customer. So that obviously goes to the marketing piece, right? There's a million different things you can do from a marketing perspective, but we're going to, delve into just a few of the key things that I do specifically and that I think are important. And then creating multiple revenue streams, I think, is super important as well. A lot of us either just sell meat or sell veggies, but what else can you do with those products that also brings in revenue throughout the year? The third thing is partnering with Mother Nature. I am a savory holistic certified educator at this point. And I've had consultants come out to my farm. Now I do consulting from that perspective. Holistic management is central to what I do as a farmer and an educator. And I think it's super important to partner with Mother Nature instead of fight her. So you have to figure out how that works. Okay, she works in cycles. So how do we work with those cycles? So we'll talk about that. And then, so fourth is, I think, record keeping. Meticulous record keeping is super important. And that's something that we still don't do great. I feel like we have a significant amount of work to still do from that perspective. But once we started really getting that pieced out and doing that better, a lot of things started to fall into place. And you can start to make financial decisions when you actually know what your finances are telling you. Okay, which I know that makes sense, right? But it's harder to do that, surprisingly, than, you know, when you talk to somebody, they're like, yes, of course you have to have, you know, meticulous books, but that's actually hard to do. And I get that. So we'll talk through that. Fifth, I actually think it's best to plan for profits first. What most of us do is go down the line and write down all of our expenses and then hope that there's profit. But you're never going to have profit if you do it that way. What you need to do first is plan for your profits. How much do you want to make a year? How much do you need to bring in to be comfortable, to pay for your housing or be able to go on vacation? Do you want to go on vacation once a year, twice a year? Do you want to bring the kids? Do you just want to go on a honeymoon type thing? You need to plan for that first and then, you know, talk about your expenses from there. So we'll talk about that. And then the last thing is also from the holistic management perspective, but I do think that you have to keep your eye on your holistic context and make decisions from that perspective to, you know, because you could make decisions every day and go 100 different ways with it. And then all of a sudden, you know, 2 years down the road, you're like, oh my gosh, like, what did we do? I feel like, you know, a space cadet here because we have so many different things going on that don't even, you know, partner with each other. And that kind of goes along with a farm plan as well. So a current farm plan, and then what your future looks like as a farm as well, and keeping the eye on that prize as well. So we're going to go through all of those things. So first,
Liz, can I,
Yep.
this seems like a good time to interrupt you and apologies, but I just wanted to let you know that there's a Zoom screen over top of your presentation in the upper left-hand corner. I don't know if there's a way to drag it away.
Oh yeah. Uh-oh. Okay, so now I made that bigger, which I don't want to do that. Uh-oh. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but I thought it would
No,
just be
that's
easier to
okay.
do it now.
Yeah, how do I exit
And
that?
no one really wants to see my face this whole time.
Uh-oh. Let me see. It's the little things, huh? So that comes up, but it keeps that screen, doesn't it? That's odd.
Yeah, it keeps it on top.
What if I just put it down here? Oh no, why is it on top? That's odd.
Is there an opportunity for you to hit a reduction on the left-hand side? Oh, that was me.
Okay, so it came back up again. Let's see. Let me close that. Let's see. Reduction. Oh, uh-oh. Now what did I do? Am I still there? Optimize the video. Let's see. It still does it. That's odd.
Well, and I don't want to take too much time, so it's just want to, if there was an easy way to do it, if not, no problem. And
Bummer. I do see it. Okay, I see it on my screen now. I'm going to put it down here on the bottom so it's not in anything. How about that? Well, at least try that. Sorry, Sarah, your face is right there. I see it now, but I don't know how else to share without, you know, why it won't pull up at least my face or something. That's all right. Meeting settings. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry if that's annoying. Which camera? Oops. Okay. That's odd. Alrighty. Well, we'll keep going like this. At least you can see the majority of the slide and it's not up there, I guess, in the way, if that's okay. Alrighty. Sorry about that, guys. A little technology. And I do Zoom meetings all the time too. And there's always something new on Zoom that I learn. All right. Anyways, okay. We're going to go back to, or kind of start with marketing here. So understanding your customer is super important. And I think you need to cherry pick your farmers markets, market your product appropriately, and you have to be very willing to pivot because you're going to think something works well, and then all of a sudden for your area or your product, it doesn't work. And this is kind of what I was hearing earlier too. People talk about, you know, they got friends, family, other consultants saying, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. But all of those things don't work for everybody, right? So if you sell vegetables, it's going to be different than if I sell bison and how I do those things. The biggest piece of that, I truly believe, is cherry picking your farmers markets. I think farmers markets are super important for everybody who has not been in the business for a very long time, because that is where your face is in front of your customer. And you can learn a lot by talking face to face to your customer. Very few of us farmers have the opportunity to have a farm store that is so well positioned that you can have customers coming to you and making you money basically Monday through Friday or Sunday through Sunday. And you just churn those customers. Yes, if you are in that type of space where you have that type of farm that people pass by and can see your sign and come see you during regular business hours, then maybe you don't have to cherry pick your farmers markets, because the customers can truly come to you and they can come to you on a regular basis. And that's wonderful. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a different slide. But if you are like me and you have a farm out in the middle of nowhere, and it's very difficult for people to get to you, you need to be cherry picking your farmers markets. Where are you going to be doing these farmers markets? What times a day? What days of the week? Where are those customers? Because especially with a product like mine, bison is expensive. Right now we sell our ground bison for $15 a pound. And that sticker shock is tough for a lot of customers who are close to me in West Virginia, when they can go down the holler and buy beef for a serious fraction of that price locally. So we do farmers markets, honestly, all over the place. We have a presence, I call it our tri-state presence. So I do sell meat in West Virginia. I sell a lot of meat in Maryland, and I sell a ton of meat in Virginia. And we sell meat as far east as Virginia Beach, Virginia. And that is worth it to us to do that. So that's what I'm talking about. Like when people are saying, you know, my local farmers market doesn't, you know, down the street, 20 minutes down the street, I don't make any money at it. And that may be the case. And it just means that you need to pick a different farmers market. A great example of this as well is farmers who do the large farmers markets in New York City. The majority of those farmers are coming from 6 hours away to do that market. And that market is lucrative enough for them that they only have to do that once a week. It sounds crazy. It does, you know, and for me, this Virginia Beach market is 7 hours away. But it's lucrative enough that I only have to do it once a week during farmers market season, and it makes me the money that I need to make. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about cherry picking your farmers markets, really, is that it's probably not your local farmers market down the road that is going to be lucrative enough for you to make the money. And you have to make a decision on, you know, if you're willing to do that or not. But I think it pays dividends to find those big farmers markets in the cities that are semi-close to you and bring your product there. And then on top of that, obviously you want to be able to market your product, right? And there's a million different ways to do that. But we'll go over that here in this next slide. Oh, that's where we're located. I'll go over that here in just a second.
We can't see your slides, just to say, we see your face.
Oh my gosh, really?
I
Uh-oh.
see your slides, Liz.
Yeah, I see the
You-
slide.
Okay.
My goodness, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's what I'm talking about. Zoom throws you curveballs sometimes, apparently. Now you just see my Zoom screen, but let me go back to the slides. Oops. No. Okay. There we go. Slides. Okay, here are those slides. I hope you guys can all see me. If you can't see it again, Sarah, let me know. I know the bottom corner is still the Zoom screen. I still can't figure out how to exit out of that, but okay, so kind of like what I was talking about, where are you located, right? So if you have a farm store and you are just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that's amazing because people can just drive to you during regular business hours and you can sell your goods directly from your farm, which is wonderful. But like I said, that's not the majority of us. The majority of us need to be looking at farmers markets and what market is going to be the biggest bang for your buck. Where are all the people basically is what I'm getting at. So when I bring my product to a place far away like Virginia Beach, it's kind of nice because the customers there basically don't look at my prices. I know, and I don't even have to have those conversations with people. They are more than willing to just walk up and be like, oh my gosh, you have bison? That's amazing. Give me 2 pounds of ground and I want these 2 steaks. End of story. And we do that all day long and it's amazing. And so that's what I'm talking about. You need to find your customer and go to them. And that's where you're going to be making your money. I guarantee it. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people because it involves a lot of driving and you have to think about all the stuff you have to bring and set up, and it's an all-day thing. And is it just one person? Is it 2 people? You know, and it's gas and mileage, and I get that. And you have to think about all of those things. But if you go to a farmer's market and make $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 all of a sudden in 4 hours, I'm pretty sure it's going to be worth your time if you can do that on a weekly basis. So, the marketing aspect of it is very important. And like I said, there's a million different ways you can go with this. But basically, you have to keep it clean and simple, yet eye-catching. So you can see the photo here at the top. It's on the top right hand of your screen. That is one of our farmers market setups. And you can see that my tent actually has my product on it. It's not just a plain black tent. It's not just a plain white tent. And the nice thing about this farmers market is that it's right next to the road. And we literally had people stop to buy our meat because they were driving by and saw my tent. It says bison meat. And they're like, oh my gosh, bison meat, that's amazing. I can't find fresh bison meat. We're going to go get this. That's what I'm talking about when I say eye-catching. And again, you have to have a tent anyways. You might as well utilize it as a marketing product. You know, it's a little bit more expensive to buy a tent like this. I think we spent, I think this one was $800. And we actually had it printed on Vistaprint, and it's a nice robust tent. But all 4 sides have something on it in related to who we are and what we do. And it is something you can see from the other end of the farmer's market or from the road when you're driving by. The other thing is, utilizing certifications. So we are technically homegrown by Heroes. So I'm a veteran myself. My husband's also a veteran. So we utilize that labeling on our packaging, and it helps to get some consumers to us. There are a million different certifications that you can choose from, but you have to figure out what's important to your customer. Virginia Beach is a military town, and we felt that this certification was very important to utilize, and it does very well for us. The other certification that we use is West Virginia grown. Most states have some type of state grown program that you can utilize because people want to know that you're truly local, right? And obviously in Virginia Beach, I'm not local, but I'm probably the most local bison farm to them, and that's okay. And then we get to talk about West Virginia and why the bison are there versus, trying to raise them at the beach and things like that. And it just, helps to have some conversation around our product. And that's also the storytelling piece of your marketing that helps keep people engaged and coming to you specifically. Yes, I'm the only bison farmer around. People can get bison shipped to their door though. So I have to engage with my customer and keep them coming back to me. If you are a vegetable farmer and you have beautiful melons, and that's something somebody else doesn't do, you should be telling that story. Or say you actually grow something other people do. You've got chickens. Why are people coming to you for your chicken? So you have to be able to talk about your product specifically and why they should come to you, or just tell them a little bit about you and why you raise chickens, and they're going to connect with you and then keep coming back to you because they know you and your product. And I feel like that's really important. The storytelling is very, very important. It's also important to have at least a little bit of an online presence. Website, most definitely. Please don't just have a Facebook page, especially because you don't own Facebook, right? And so they can change what your page looks like, what those algorithms do, and just they can do so many things that are not in your control. And so I don't recommend only utilizing social media for your presence. I highly recommend you have some type of website, even if it's just a one-page website that just has who you are, where you are, and what you do. I mean, keep it super simple. That's totally fine. But they have to have something to land on when they Google search sheep in Wisconsin, or melons in Tennessee, or locally grown kale in Virginia, things like that. Like, you want your website to pop up and not just a Facebook page, because that Facebook page is always going to look different, even if it's an Instagram account, things like that. It's hard to keep, those pages and your marketing consistent because they keep changing things on those. So I don't recommend only leaning on those social media aspects. It's great to have a Facebook page and Instagram. That's what I use. I know that there are a million things you could do nowadays. People keep telling me I should do TikTok. I just don't have the time and energy to do another social media. So I really choose to keep Facebook and keep Instagram and keep them as updated as possible. And I have a kick-ass website too. And that is my main focus, is my website. Then I like to do Instagram because Instagram's easy. And then I do Facebook just because I've had a Facebook for forever and I just keep it up. The other thing to think about when marketing your product is sizing. I think sizing is key. If you are selling an entire bundle of kale or an entire basket of apples, and that's the only way you sell your apples is it is an entire basket, most people don't want the entire basket. They may just want to buy 2 apples because those apples are going to go bad before they get a chance to get to them. Vice versa, though, when things are in season and people want to start canning, give them the option to buy more than just 2 apples and actually buy an entire basket of it. It kind of goes back and forth, and you got to make sure you're giving people options. The thing that we run into all the time is steaks, okay? Especially for bison. And I see this a lot for producers who do, more exotic meats, like lamb. I shouldn't even say that that's exotic, but it's just something that people don't have on their table every day. They just want a little bit of lamb or a little bit of bison to try it out. They don't want an entire pound of steaks. An entire pound of steak, when people only eat 6 to 8 ounces of steak, feeds an entire family, of 5 or 6 people. And sometimes they don't actually want that. They just want, 2 steaks to try out for an appetizer, or there's just 2 of them in the home. And so giving them options, I feel like, is really key. Yeah, sometimes they want to feed the entire family bison steaks, but sometimes they just want a tenderloin to feed, themselves and one other person. Same thing like ground bison. A lot of people don't want to buy 10 pounds of ground bison. It's a lot easier to get that from the processor, they'll be more than happy to just give you 10 pound, 10-pound sacks all the time. But most people want to buy just a 1 pound package to try it out or to utilize in a recipe that day. So you got to kind of think about the size aspect. We also do value added items that are in cute pint size, typical wide mouth ball jars, right? And so the pint sizes are nice because they're basically single servings, and that's what people want to try. And that's also where the price tag comes into play as well, right? So if I do a pint size macaroni and cheese that is $15, that's a little bit easier to swallow than trying to do a container's worth of mac and cheese that is almost $30 for them to put into their oven. So just things to think about, if your customer base is starting to tell you that, like, oh man, I really wish it wasn't an entire, bundle of kale, but I could just get, half of that, start thinking about how you would maybe price that out and offer that to the customer, especially when it comes to herbs and things like that. A lot of people just need spices for the week or for that day. And how can you potentially, make those sizes for that customer and make it easy for them to buy your product? That's basically where I'm going with it, is you need to make it easy for them. I'm also a huge proponent of not offering discounts, because if you offer an item at discount, then people start thinking, well, I'm never going to buy it then when it's full price. I'm always going to wait for them to discount it. Or what a lot of people do is they sell product that is either broken or not as pretty at a discount. And I caution you to do that because people are going to potentially go for that product, and that is not your best product being put out there. So I would be very careful doing that unless you have a customer base that you have already had multiple interactions with, and they already know your product, they know the best of your product, but they're interested in getting, this is a bad example because I don't know many people who grow bananas, but bananas that are brown because they're going to make banana bread later on. That's great, but that wouldn't be something that you would want to bring to the farmer's market. People don't want to see brown bananas. Again, not my favorite example, but you get what I'm talking about. Is like same thing with tomatoes that are blemished and need to be cut before being canned, but they're going to can them anyway, so it's not a big deal. You're giving them a discount on the tomatoes. They're cutting half the tomato out, but it's going to be canned anyways. It's not like they're putting it in salads. I just would be very cautious with who you offer that to. For meat, a great example of this is packages that are freezer burnt. We do not sell freezer burnt meat, especially steaks, because most people just take a steak and put it on the grill and that's it. Meat that is freezer burnt and can still probably be sold are things like roasts or ribs, things that are going to be sitting in a marinade for a long time, because at that point, you can't tell that a portion of that meat or the side of that meat was ever freezer burnt. It does affect the integrity of that meat. And so if you're selling it, even if you're selling it at a discount, your customers are getting something that is subpar. So I caution you in doing that. I really would only offer that to customers who are consistently coming to you, know your product very well, and this is just like an added bonus for them. Hey, by the way, I have an entire, basket of bruised apples, and I know that you make applesauce for your family for Christmas. Do you want to utilize these apples at a serious discount? That's where I would go with that. But I would not be posting on Facebook or social media or your website that, hey, it's apple season and I have a lot of apples, so they're 20% off now. I would caution you on that seriously. And then I also think it's super important to offer folks recipes for your items. Everybody knows how to cook a steak, but not everybody knows how to cook with banana peppers, say, or eggplant is a good one. Eggplant comes into season and it's beautiful and it's purple, or some of them are just like speckled and wonderful and you want to buy one, but you're like, what the heck am I going to do with it? So if you can put that product out there at the farmer's market or in your store, and there's a little recipe card next to it, easy. All of a sudden people are like, well, great. Now I know how to cook this. And if you can tie in something else that you sell as well. So say you sell onions, you could do something that has onions and eggplant in it, and then you're catching it from multiple angles. And I mean, you could just spin off of that for days. We have a hard time selling really big roasts or briskets unless I actually make a recipe for people and send it home with them to make it very easy for them to cook. That's also why I actually created an entire cookbook of very simple bison recipes that people can take home now. And it's a nice little gift as well. But I have like 24 different recipes that we've been working on for years. It's a beautifully done cookbook. Like I said, it's a fun gift for people, but it also makes it very easy for them to make different cuts of meat in their own home, whether it is steaks, whether they want to smoke something, whether they want to put a roast on for a crowd. They actually have the confidence in doing that, and they're not going to worry about spending the price tag and buying a 4 to 5 pound roast. All of a sudden that's okay because I taught them how to do it, or I told them how they can do it very simply. So I do recommend offering recipes to people. I think it's super helpful. Again, kind of like we talked about earlier, if you're going to be marketing your product, you need to market yourself and why. Like, people want to connect with you. So you have to tell them your story and make them want to come back to you. Again, I sell bison. It's a little bit of a niche meat, but anybody can get bison shipped directly to their door. They don't even have to walk down the farmer's market to get it, So why are they coming to me specifically to get their bison meat? It's because they know that I am a mom of 2 children and want to feed them the highest quality meat that is out there on the market. It is humane. We actually field harvest our bison. Our bison is grass-fed and grass-finished. They can get grass-fed and grain-finished bison, typically from, even some grocery stores carry it right now. But the grass finishing is a huge deal to my customers, and they want to know about that and why I do that and how I do that, right? I even have farmers come up to me and be like, okay, well, how are you truly grass finished? Talk to me about that. And that makes a difference to them. And that's why they come to me for their meat. So you need to be able to market your story. Why do you have chickens? What breed of chickens do you use? Do you do turkey or turkeys as well? Why are people getting eggs from you? I know typically people go to their favorite farmer for eggs, and then once they're out, they'll go to the next farmer, but why are you their favorite farmer for eggs? Talk more about that and ask them to tell their friends about it too, because your yolks are just the best. They are a beautiful orangey color, and it all stays intact when you break it, in the pan. I mean, that's something you could even do on a YouTube video, like, look at your egg versus the store-bought egg and how they, expand in the pan differently. And all of a sudden people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there was a difference. It's that education piece. And again, you have to be around to tell people that or showcase that in a website or on social media for them to keep coming back to you. So that's part of marketing yourself. But Sarah, also, I didn't see, are there questions so far? I don't want to go back and forth.
Actually, before we go too far away from the farmer's market topic, I just wanted to lift up a couple questions. Michelle was asking, do you have a plan to phase to a local employee or collaborate with a vendor at the Virginia Beach farmer's market for you every other week to clip some of the commute? And then another, Barbara was asking what the cost is to participate in the farmer's market in New York City, sharing that the cost of a single booth in their city is $120 each Saturday, and wondering if USDA or any other program supplements those fees.
Those are great questions. Let me start with the first one in regards to not having to travel. Yes, I would love to utilize some local contacts that I have in Virginia Beach to have somebody else do a farmer's market here. We've been looking at that pretty hard for the past, I'd say 10 months, because especially with small children, the commute is a pain in my butt, but it's where we make a lot of our money. So that is definitely in the works, and I highly recommend, if you have somebody that you trust and will do those markets for you, rock on, and you can pay them by any means, please do that. But I know that that is, again, a thorn in most farmer sides. Keeping good help is very hard. And we utilize family mostly for everything that we do on the farm, because I feel like there's a little bit of recourse there. You know, everybody wins in the family if this works. And they love you, you know, as a human and as a person, and so they're willing to go the extra mile for you. It's hard to find good farm help, you know, to either work on your farm or work in your farmer's market. But if you can find them and they do a good job, oh my gosh, do that and pay them a good salary to do that, because they're going to be the ones standing there telling your story. And I do have a friend who potentially is going to be running our markets here for us in a year or so, once, you know, we need to transition and stay at the farm and not do those commutes anymore. I would love to do that. So I agree. If you can find somebody to do that, most definitely. And it still is worth your time, or it's still worth it for you to pay somebody to do that market, because you don't want to be paying somebody $500 to do a market that only makes you $600, right? So so that's something to think about when you're, you know, looking at the financials. As far as farmers markets and what your booths cost, that's an expensive price tag on your booth, $120 a market. Honestly, what we end up paying is usually it's only about $20 to $25 a market. And then some markets require you to cost share. So they want to know how much you made at that market, and they require you to pay them 3% of that. I think the booths in New York City, I think, are actually running about $100 and something a market, because they are in New York City. But that was the most expensive I had heard of. So right. So if you're going to take the time to drive out there and do that market for 4 to 6 hours, it needs to be making you thousands of dollars. Okay. Or if you're going to pay somebody to go do it for you sometimes, right? Thousands of dollars. But I can honestly say those markets are the types of markets that bring in thousands of dollars a market. And that is why we do the markets down here in Virginia Beach as well, because they're very, very lucrative. So I think that's all for questions. But again, stop me if you guys have questions so we can talk about things along the way. Another thing we do is we've created multiple revenue streams. So yes, I have bison and I sell bison meat, but I also sell farm merchandise. Okay, that's really popular nowadays. If you get a really cool hat, you know, that's got a really, you know, awesome chicken on the top, or a pig, or, you know, your farm logo or your farm name. People like things like that, especially if you can get a farm t-shirt that is kind of cheeky. You know, I'm all into that type of stuff. So our farm t-shirt has Riffle Farms on the front and a bison, and on the back it says, "I like big buffs." And people think that's hysterical. And it's a nice V-neck, you know, t-shirt. So I did go a little bit above and beyond and splurge for, you know, a really soft cotton in a V-neck style. And people, you know, buy us out of those all the time. The other thing we do, and that I love to do, obviously, is classes. We do a lot of butchery classes because we're in the meat business. But if you sell milk, or you do cheese, oh my gosh, people love to go learn how to make cheese or how to make yogurt. There's even a lot of people who want to learn how to butcher their own chicken. So if you have chickens, you can offer that. You can offer people to come out to their farm and learn or teach their children, you know, where the chicken actually comes from. That's starting to be really big. A lot of people look at me, you know, with wide eyes, like, seriously, people want to learn how to kill their own chicken? But people really want to learn how to kill their own chicken, which is amazing. And that's wonderful that we're starting to put these pieces back together in our food system. But that can be very lucrative for you, because all of a sudden that chicken that you have to sell whole, or that you would like to sell whole, you know, that maybe is only $25 for a whole chicken, if you charge them $75 to come out for a class and they bring home a whole chicken, there you go, you know, and then you got a little bit of help harvesting those chickens, which is kind of nice. Another big thing right now is cooking classes. So people want to know how to cook your products. And if you have a space or a space that you can rent to utilize to show them how to make eggplant Parmesan, wonderful. You know, and I'm talking, you can charge for those classes anywhere from $150 to $400, you know, depending on how long that class is, if you offer beer or wine during it, and if you offer them to take home some of your products, you know, you create an entire veggie basket that they can go home with. We actually, as an example, we sell tickets to our bison harvest every year. That is the day before our annual bison roast. And I charge people $25 just to come up and watch the animal be put down, because they want to see how that works in the field. Literally. I mean, I'm not joking. Like, and I get 25 people coming out, and, you know, this past year, it went from 5 people to 12 people to 25 people. And now I already have, you know, 30 or more people interested in doing that class this coming year. And I have also done classes for pig butchery. We did a class that we charged $350 for instruction, and you bring home half a pig. Most recently, I did a pig butchery class that showcased the field harvesting and evisceration of that pig. And we charged $750 for that weekend class. So, I mean, people obviously get, you know, some serious education from that. They could definitely go home and butcher their own pig if they wanted to. And they actually went home with a lot of sausage and obviously ground pork and things like that. They went home with a bunch of it. But that was a $750 class per person. And then for things like farm to table dinners, which you'd be surprised, a lot of people want to come to, that's really big right now. And you can totally pull it off in your own space or with a fellow farmer outside underneath a tent. And we sell farm to table dinners from anywhere from $35 a person to $125 a person. And we see anywhere from 30 people per dinner to 125 people per dinner. So, I mean, there's all kinds of options there. You know, when you start doing classes and adding other revenue streams. We also do tours on our farm, and we complement that with, it's not just a tour, it's a tour and a tasting. So we do a full farm tour, and then we bring them back into the barn and show them how to cook a bison steak or make a bison burger. And then they get to taste that. You know, have a small portion of it, you know, a couple ounces of a steak, or they get a bison slider. And we charge, we were charging $10 per person for that. I think I may up that and give them, you know, a whole burger, you know, this year. So we're kind of tweaking it as we go as well to make sure that it's lucrative for us, and it actually makes a big impact. The other thing that we do is we add value to our meat by renting a small commercial kitchen. And I make those pint-sized containers like I was talking about of macaroni and cheese, and we do chilies and a few other things. We do like bison, like mozzarella stuffed bison meatballs and stuff like that, and sell it. And it doubles my margin on my ground meat. And it's worth the rental fee for the kitchen, and it's worth my time. So, so I think those things are super important to think about and really map out and see how much that's going to cost you and how much it's going to add, or how much value it would add to, you know, one of your items. The other piece of the pie here is thinking about partnering with Mother Nature. We don't want to be fighting her, okay? If we're in an area that has droughts on a regular basis, we need to think about how we're going to utilize the rain when it does come. From the holistic management perspective, it's a brittleness scale. You know, if you are somewhere where it's tropical, basically, and you have rainforest in your backyard, you know, your brittleness, your number on the brittleness scale is not nearly as low as somewhere like Colorado and who's consistently in drought, or in the Dakotas and things like that, you want to think about how you're going to plan your farm from that perspective, right? Where are you going to get your water? Because a drought is going to happen, even in West Virginia, where I am. And we are pretty humid and we get a nice amount of rainfall. There's been a few years in the summertime where we've had drought. And I actually, last year, it was 2000, actually it was 2000, yeah, it was 2021. We had a significant drought for about 2 months, and my animals drink about 500 gallons of water a day. And I had to have the fire department come out and bring us water for weeks. And we had to pay them to do that because they ran my well dry and I didn't have a backup watering system. Now we get the majority of our water off of all of our barns. You'd be amazed how much water, when it does rain, how much water comes down on your barn and you can utilize. But that's another one of those things that you want to be thinking holistically about, partnering with Mother Nature and not fighting against her. You know, like what a lot of people do is when there's a drought, instead they sell off a portion of their animals instead of figuring out how to work with Mother Nature's cycles. Okay, so that's a prime example there. And grazing plans are a big piece of that as well. You know, where and how are you going to be grazing your animals during a drought? Are you going to be able to do that, or do you have to have, you know, hay storage for that? Or if you do grain feed, you know, is that when you use your grain? And then I'm a big proponent for animal husbandry and humane practices, and holistic management is also from that perspective. But we really think about every way that we can pull animals into a space instead of push them. Typically for us, obviously we're grass-fed and grass finished. I have an entire herd of bison. As soon as I walk in there and open up a gate, they move themselves to a new pasture. There's no herding dogs. Very rarely do we use a herding dog, and that's just because my farm manager has a herding dog and it's their instinct. But we don't use four-wheelers or anything to get them where they need to be. We pull them into different spaces, even if that means pulling them into small corrals and things like that. We put hay in there. Occasionally that is the only time we will use grain. They do know what grain is, because if I need to get them into a very small pen, I'll put grain in there, and man, they'll go in there quicker than quick. So again, that is understanding how your animal works and utilizing their instincts to your advantage instead of fighting against it. Because it is very dangerous, especially for us with an exotic animal, to fight against that animal and try and put them in a space that they don't want to be in. So we definitely prefer to partner with them and make them think it's their idea versus fighting with them. So, and you can do that with all kinds of animals, right? You learn what they like and how to utilize that to your advantage to get them into the spaces that you need them to be in. And then, so meticulous records, okay? So I think this is super important and is definitely something that we still struggle with as a farm, but it's where you make all your decisions from. So from your finances to your feed, to your animals, to how much you're actually selling. Do you know which farmers markets are actually worth your time, right? So I do have a couple farmers markets where they're very close to us, and we need to make at least $500 to break even. Okay, that's to pay my farm manager to go to that market, that's to pay for the gas to get there, and to pay for the space that, you know, the space fee that they have. And I know that, and so it takes the guessing work out of that game when you start having those conversations with the other people who are helping you run your farm, right? I go to a market, and to be honest with you, there's one market that I don't really love. It's kind of a bad time of day and it's just not my favorite. And so when it's a slow day, I'm always like, yeah, see, you know, Jimmy, like this is a slow day and I just really don't think we should be doing this market anymore. And I don't think it's worth our time. And he's like, okay, well, let's look back at the sales and see if it's actually worth our time or not. And come to find out, that darn market makes us an average of $550 to $600 time, and is actually technically worth our time to go. you know, we are definitely paying everybody and making the money we wanted to make at that market. So me sitting there thinking that it's not worth our time actually isn't even a conversation because we track it. And so we can actually have a conversation based on true data. It makes a big difference. Same thing when it comes to your animals, right? Especially when you start having chickens and you have a lot of them, you know, which chickens are doing best and where are they doing best? Instead of being like, oh, you know, that chicken house does a lot better on pasture 4 versus pasture 2. And you say that in the spring when the grass is growing amazing. But if you don't track that, you're not going to know where to put them back, you know? So those records are super important, and especially when it comes to your yearly finances and your taxes. You know, when you use record systems like QuickBooks, it's important to have that up to date. And that is something that we struggle with right now, especially if you want financing. Okay. So if you want somebody to take you seriously and you want a loan for your farm business, you need to be able to walk into that bank and show them your QuickBooks reports that have a true profit and loss statement, a balance statement that actually makes sense to them. And they can utilize that and be like, oh yeah, they are a legitimate business. Look at this profit and loss statement. You know, I can actually follow this and they make this much money and they spend this much money and it's all written out here for us. And great, we'll loan you money based on this. But if you don't keep those records, they're going to look at you like, how am I going to lend you money? Like, you can't even keep your own records. How do I know if you're going to pay me? And I feel like a lot of farmers are not very good at that. You know, they're not very good at keeping their finances in check because they're doing a lot of other things, and bookkeeping is actually time consuming. Unfortunately, I spend at least an entire day a week on just bookkeeping, and it's tedious, and it's not why I got in the business, and it's easy to let it go and not do it for weeks, and then it becomes even more tedious, and then before you know it, you have a bookkeeper who comes in and is like, your taxes have been wrong for years, and you're like, oh my gosh, really? So if today you're that person, I recommend you get back with your QuickBooks or whatever system that you utilize for your bookkeeping and really work on it either yourself or with a local bookkeeper or a CPA, and really figure it out and make it easy to showcase to other people if you want to be able to get farm loans. Okay, because if you don't do that, the bank is not going to take you seriously if you do not have an accurate profit and loss statement or an accurate balance sheet that actually makes sense. Okay, I think those are super important. And nowadays, to be honest with you, I have a couple examples on here. AgriWeb and Pasture Map are really great ways to keep track of your animals, who you have, where you have them. And they also do really wonderful things like how much rain have you had and things like that, and track those things for you. And some of them even help you create your own grazing plan, which is kind of awesome. And probably the majority of us already know of systems like Clover and Square and Shopify, you know, to utilize for point of sales. But those also need to be accurate as well. So whether there's a bunch of them now you can use, but you need to make sure that your categories are correct and that you are actually inputting all of your data in there and not just inputting dollars and cents. So you don't want to just all day long say $5, $5, $5, $10, you know, then at the end of the day, all you're doing is, you know, how much money you brought in, but do you know what categories they were for and things like that, and what your best seller truly was? So I would utilize those systems, those point of sale systems to your advantage, and put the data in there that they are requesting from you, you know, like Square, for example, has categories like meat and merchandise and value added items that we have in our point of sale, and it helps us keep track of what our moneymakers are. And it's helpful, again, to have those conversations, because another example, like the farmers market, is those darn mozzarella stuffed bison meatballs, which is our third best seller, interestingly enough, and they are a pain in the butt to make. They're such a pain in the butt. I mean, meatballs are a pain in the butt to make anyways, but then you got to stuff it with a mozzarella ball, and then you got to vacuum seal them and all this stuff. And people love them, and we sell out of them all the time. And I hate making them, but I wouldn't know that they were a bestseller unless I had input that data into Square to show me every time that, oh yeah, by the way, this value added item, this category is one of the kick-ass categories, that you have. And so here I am still making mozzarella stuffed bison meatballs because it makes me a lot of money. So this kind of goes along with that bookkeeping piece. If you want to get loans for your farm business, your books have got to be accurate. And a big piece of the dollars and cents of what you do on your farm and why, I believe, is that you need to plan for profit first. Do you want to go on a vacation this year with your family? Okay, great. How much is that going to cost you? That's going to cost me $8,000. So I know this year when I'm working on my spreadsheet, or I'm working in QuickBooks or whatever it is that I am going to put $8,000 down there for profit. Like I need to make at least $8,000 to do that this year for profit. Okay, great. Say you're the type of person who loves to buy yourself a new pair of boots every year. Okay, great. And they're expensive cowgirl boots. Great. And those cost you $500. So you know that you're going to spend that kind of money. And so you need to put that in there. Or every month that you have a mortgage to pay, right? Which is not necessarily profit, but if it's a mortgage for a house that's not your farmhouse, that needs to be put in there, or you want to make every month, that you spend throughout the month $1,000 just on getting your nails done or buying a new pair of sunglasses or whatever, right? So you need to be able to pay yourself $1,000 a month. I'm going to be honest with you, I think that's a low number. That's only $12,000 a year. I think your time is worth a lot more than that, but you have to start somewhere. Okay. What is a reasonable amount that you would like to pocket this year? And we're at a great time of year to be doing this. It's December, it's going to be a new year here very shortly. So how much do you want to make in 2023? You need to put that down first. And then you put your expenses in there. Okay. And you kind of work backwards. You're like, okay, so these are my expenses, for the year. Could we get away with not, utilizing that much gas this year? Or we don't buy a new tractor this year, and that is what it is. Or we don't buy that piece of equipment this year because we want to go on vacation instead, So you're working backwards from that profit piece. And those expenses are much more controlled when you work from that perspective. Otherwise, you're just going to keep adding expenses. You can always add an expense. I could always do something else, right? But if it means that I'm not going to make that much profit, the profit that I want to make that year, then potentially it's not an expense I need to utilize that year. It can wait another year, or I can cut that expense in half potentially, or think of a better idea as to how to utilize my fencing or get different fencing potentially. Because if you just start from the expense category, you're going to be like, yep, fencing costs $4 a foot. Okay, great. And move on to the next expense. But if you're working backwards, you're like, well, okay, this is what this guy says he can do fencing for $4 a foot. Or I could actually probably put in that pasture myself at $2 a foot. That makes a big difference, but you may not think about that if you're not working backwards from your profits first. So I just urge you to try it that way and see if it makes you think about things a little bit differently. For me, it did. It made a huge difference for me working from the profit perspective first. This is how much money I want to make this month because I like to get my nails done and get a new pair of shoes every month, and it is what it is. My husband's like, you're not going to not buy a pair of shoes this month, so we just need to plan for it, and that's okay. So we do. And it shifted my perspective enough to make a huge difference in our bottom line, a huge difference. The other thing you can do for yourself and for your farm is just Google search grants. You'd be surprised how many people put grants out there. We got a grant. We got a $20,000 grant from Lowe's one year. Lowe's. They were just asking about small businesses and apparently had a surplus that they wanted to donate. And so I, one day was going through a Google search and applied for that loan or for that grant, and we got it. And it was worth $20,000. Typically grants are only going to be worth 3 to 10. You're going to get lucky to get a grant that's worth more than that, but they're out there, I'm telling you. And you're not going to get them unless you search for them. And that's the best way that I have found to search for grants, honestly. It's just a Google search. Quarterly, I go on just Google grants, small business grants, small farm business grants, things like that. And sometimes there's something that's legit and sometimes there's not. Usually, I'd say in a year, I probably apply to, I don't know, I'd say maybe 6 grants a year. And one year we got 3 of them and they were worth, like I said, over $20,000. I think I had like $30,000 worth of grants that I got one year, which was awesome. This past year, I got 5, so it fluctuates, but they're out there and you should be applying to them. Most states also have a small business development center. West Virginia has one, and it's very robust and they're super helpful. That is who has actually helped get my bookkeeping back in line, because we totally messed up QuickBooks. I mean, we royally messed it up. And the Small Business Development Center has been the ones to really help me regulate my books. I mean, they'll do anything for you, from marketing to business plans to how to apply for a loan to a bank. You can do all those things to the Small Business Center. But we're utilizing them specifically to fix our finances, or our bookkeeping, I should say, because I kind of messed it up. And nowadays, there's actually a lot of lenders out there. It's called agri-lending, who want to partner with you to give you loans and give you the money that you actually need as a small farmer to grow your business. Because unfortunately, there have been a lot of banks out there who have not been comfortable lending to farmers because we're a high risk category technically, or we haven't been in business long enough, or we don't make enough money, things like that. Specifically for me with bison, they were like, bison, that's not even liquid. Like I couldn't even bring them to an auction and sell them if I needed to. If you didn't make your payments, they're like, no, I'm not lending you money. Like I know nothing about the bison business. They're not a commodity, so they can't track that in any way, shape, or form. If you did corn, yeah, sure, they're like, I'll lend you on corn because it's a commodity. So you run into those issues as a small farmer. And now there's some really wonderful companies out there called agri-lenders. We've utilized one specifically called Steward, and we got over $100,000 from them to build some infrastructure and a commercial kitchen and things. And we're still using that money right now to do those things. Their interest rates are high, but they're super transparent, honestly. And if you can make that money back and you have a great business plan, then it doesn't matter, because you just need that money. You don't have $100,000 in the bank, but you're going to make $200,000, $300,000 from this investment. Not a problem. All they want is a business plan. Easy. I mean, we can all come up with a business plan, right? They don't need, your taxes from the past 10 years or to make sure your husband has an off-farm job and things like that. Nope. They're truly just lending to you based on a business plan, which is pretty awesome. And that's something we can do pretty well as farmers, I think. So, and again, kind of going back to what I was talking about planning for profits, is you also have to plan. If you want to pay somebody and you want somebody to do those farmers markets for you, you got to be planning for those hourly wages and potentially insurance at some point. So those are things that need to be in the back of your mind if you actually want to be paying somebody wages. What is a good hourly wage nowadays? We pay $25 an hour is what we pay. And we also do insurance monthly. So, but we did that in a stepwise process, right? We paid hourly wages and full-time salary first, and then came the insurance piece. So, and that's something that was really important as a family and as a family farm business, for us to be able to offer to our employees. So, circling back to holistic context and farm planning, all of these decisions you make, which or even the financial decisions come back down to your mission as a farm or your context, which is basically why you take certain actions and make certain decisions. It is your shared mission, and it's something that you need to be on board with, obviously, if you're the farm owner, but your spouse needs to be on board with your mission. Do you guys know what the mission is for your farm? Can you articulate that together? If somebody came up to the two of you or all of your farm, okay, all 5 of your employees, and said, tell me what your mission is. And are all of your employees going to say the same thing for your mission and basically your context for why and what you are doing? That's something that is so simple, but I feel like a lot of people don't share, especially as, a couple, right? So I'm like, I know what my farm vision is, but my husband's like, wait a second, that's not quite my vision. Maybe we need to articulate this better, and together. And so when we worked together on our holistic context, which is, our farm mission, and shared that with the rest of our family and whoever is working for us, or potentially even if they're just doing some summer work or things like that, everyone is on the same page with what the context is for this farm and why we do what we do. And so when a customer comes up and sees them at the booth, or a customer comes to the farm, everybody's on the same page with what and why we do. And it's very important to share that, because there are going to come times where there are decisions where people want to give you a free high tunnel, right? That sounds awesome. A high tunnel sounds great. A high tunnel would maybe be wonderful for an operation like ours, but nope. We just do meat. We're not getting into the vegetable business. So I don't want that high tunnel. And I'm going to, send you to somebody who could actually utilize that, because that's not in our context. Another great example of this is actually one of my mentors actually was offered a free high tunnel, but his and his wife's context for their farm was that they wanted to respect the seasonality of their meat and their vegetables. And so the high tunnel extends that season, right? And so that was not technically their context, and they didn't want to do anything outside of season. So they did choose to give that high tunnel to somebody else, because that just wasn't their context. And that's okay, because that's another one of those things. Everybody wants you to do everything all the time, and you can't. So you need to make a decision on what your context is and do it well. Just do it damn well, and focus on that and stay with that. And that's okay. You don't need that high tunnel then, because you're seasonal, and that's all right. So the other piece of that is planning your farm out now, making sure that you have a great map of where all of your pastures are, or where all of your plants are, or where you're going to put strawberries next year, or where you are going to graze and where you aren't going to graze. What does that look like right now? And continually making plans for what you want that to look like in the future, because is that truly the most efficient way to utilize your space? Is that the best place for the water? Probably not. Could you move that? Probably, and make this a one-man job versus a two-man job. Prime example for things like that for us is, where's the gate? Do I need 2 gates? If you're going to go in that pasture, is that a one-person job, or are you going to have the entire herd on top of you when you open up that gate because they want to get out of it? So all of a sudden it's not a one-person job, it's actually a 2-person job, which is a bummer because you only hired one person to do that job, right? So little things like that. There's ways to plan where you put your forage, like where do you put your hay so that it makes it easier to feed in the winter, little things like that. You want to put up a new barn, awesome. Should you put it close to the barn you have right now, or do you need to put it someplace else where it would be easier to feed in the winter? Things like that. You want to put it at the top of the hill, or do you need to put it at the bottom of the hill? Do you have a water issue or not? So it makes a difference on where you would put some of those things. And not everything's perfect. So a big thing about holistic management and that holistic context is making a plan, implementing that plan, and then replanning. And that's what I'm getting at when I talk about what is your farm like right now and what do you want it to look like in the future, and making a plan to get to that, to make your farm more efficient so that maybe you don't have to hire 8 people. You could actually do this job with 4 people if you moved your pasture and your gates, or moved where your irrigation system was. that may be really helpful, you know, if you don't have to have that many people around. So just things to think about from that perspective. I added this too, and this is actually one of the downloads that you can get off of my profile. This is an example of a holistic context. Excuse me, sorry. It's lots of talking. So the thing that I really like about holistic management is it's not just a mission statement. It really dives down into very specifically how and why you are going to make decisions, okay? So I have a statement of purpose, right? Or a mission statement up there, but I talk about specifically who those decision makers are, right? It's me, my husband, my brother-in-law, and my mom, right? Because I make decisions based on my mom who helps me with my kids. She needs to know if I'm going to be in the commercial kitchen more often or not, and if that's worth my time and if that's okay with her, right? Because I've got 2 small children and somebody needs to watch them while I'm in the kitchen. Jeremy is my brother-in-law, who is also our farm manager. And so he obviously needs to know what our mission is because he's the one who goes to some farmers markets and talks all about our meat and why we do certain things. And he, you know, actually runs tours and tastings and things like that. So we most definitely need to be on board with what the mission statement is. And we are all on board with that context specifically from the perspective of a quality of life, behavior perspective, and what our resources are. So we came up with this together, and this made sense for all of us on, you know, honoring nature's cycles. And it's okay that nature does cycle, and we need to allow her to do that. Okay, so primarily from that perspective is like our breeding cycles, right? So, and we allow some of our animals to skip a breeding season because that's how they would have naturally cycled in the wild. A lot of other bison operations are one and done. If a female misses a cycle, she's meat. But we respect and honor nature's cycles the way that they would normally be out in the wild, and we allow our animals to skip a season. If they start skipping multiple seasons in a row, then there's something going on. But in the wild, they would skip a season, and that's okay. And so we allow that. So that's a prime example. Again, I'm not going to read all of this to you. You can definitely download this if you want to have something that you can kind of build your own holistic context on. But I also recommend you do some reading into it. You know, there's an entire holistic management textbook out there, and there's chapters on holistic context, and I think it's really important. And I would, you know, make that recommendation to you all to maybe take a closer look at, because it's more than just a mission statement. It really pieces it out so you can have a fruitful conversation with your employees and or your family about why, how, and what you do. I think it's very, very helpful. It made a big difference for us. So, and that's it. That was a lot, I know. So here is my info, and I actually do consulting now from the holistic management standpoint specifically. I run an 8-week course. That's an online course, and we do farm visits and things like that if you've taken that course, and we can run you through the entire holistic management perspective. But yeah, that's kind of it. So questions, I want to open it up for a few more questions here. I think I can see the chat box now. I'm going to actually, I could stop sharing my screen. I could probably do that. There we go. Here we all are. Okay, cool. I'm going to take a peek at the chat box and see if there's anything else that
Liz,
anybody
you
has
want me to
questions about.
summarize a couple of them here for you?
Yeah, sure.
That's
Please
great.
do.
So I wanted to lift up a question we got over in Huba, which is how, from Julie, how do you handle the actual weight of the cut steak versus the price per pound when you're selling online?
Yes. Okay. So selling online is a pain in the butt when it comes to meat and vegetables. Yeah. So what I do is I give people an overview of what I offer online. So I still do it by the pound because that's the easiest way for me to do it with meat. So my prime example, chuck roast is $17 a pound. And when they go to purchase it online, basically what they're doing is I don't ship. So they're pre-ordering it online. And my chuck roasts are not cut in 1, 2, and 3 pounds. Nothing's ever cut perfectly in pounds. So what I do in that little box there is I say, please, order, 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds, 3.5 pounds, so that it is as close as possible to what I actually have in my freezer. And occasionally, it'll be 2.3 pounds and I'll owe them, $4. And so they'll get $4 back. So that's how I do it. It's messy and I don't love it, but that's the best way I have found so far to deal with online ordering when it comes to food that does not come in exact weights. Is I try and give them those options. Or like my fillets, they have the options to order 0.4 pounds, 0.6 pounds, 0.8 pounds, because that's a really expensive meat. And so I do, that's not even by the pound, that's by the ounce. So that's where I go with that. But that's a great question. And that's a little bit of a conundrum. I agree. So I just try to give them options. And the online thing is typically for customers who have been to me before and we have a little bit of a relationship and it just is convenient for them to pre-order. So.
That's great. Thank you so much. Another couple of questions in here is how large is your herd, and more broadly, what led you to choose bison in the first place?
Sure. So my herd comparatively is actually pretty small. You think of bison, you think of big ranchers and hundreds of acres or thousands of acres. We don't do that. I have about 45 animals right now on only about 65 acres. We do have another space to expand to, another 72 acres. I would like to double my herd size in the next 12 months because the demand is there. And we can do that just because we rotationally graze appropriately. My 65 acres will actually hold 75 animals from the work I've done from a holistic management standpoint myself and with my own consultant that I utilize, which is really, really cool. Yes, bison are a little bit better on the land than cattle. They're just a little bit more efficient, but I mean, we're talking fractions of efficiency when you break it down. But we chose bison because of their innate nature to utilize the forage better and graze better than cattle do. And they're a little bit more of a robust animal, which is a good and a bad thing. So they're harder to handle because they're more robust, but they're more robust in relation to weather and drought, right? If my animals don't have water for one day, or even in the winter, like they've gone multiple days without water accidentally because we had, a crazy freeze, they're okay. A lot of cows would die if they didn't have water for that day. And so that's part of the reason why we chose those animals, is because they're just a little bit more hardy. And the meat itself is actually super heart healthy, which we were really picky about as nurses coming into the trade. It's a really lean red meat and it's a lot healthier to eat than to have beef every night. So that's my story kind of behind that. But yeah, I think I answered that.
That's wonderful. And I hate to cut short this. I feel like we could gather from your wisdom for the next hour, but I think we have to wrap it. There's more of the conference to go to today, but I wanted to just say thank you so much, Liz. And how would people get in touch with you if they wanted to follow up with you directly?
Yeah, definitely. So you can check out our website. There's all my contact information on there, which is just rifflefarms.com. You can email me at info@rifflefarms.com as well. So, and I would love to chat with you and answer any more of your questions. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who attended today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care now.
Thanks, guys.